Chapter 8. He lit a cigarette, the 12th since the airdrome, as if to light the stairway, which was now in darkness. The door to his apartment stood ajar. He pushed it open and went in. No one in the study, but a sound of voices in the second room, though no light filtered through under the door. The shutters had not been closed. He listened, with one finger on the switch, to the voice which seemed to be muffled by the obscurity and clarified by the reflections from the street and the dark study where a hanging made a great pale shadow. My little springtime, my lamb, my chick, I have given you lovely eyes, such blue eyes, and if you're not satisfied, I'll give you Sunday eyes. With them, we'll go and see the land of little animals, where there are dogs and birds, all in plush because they're so young, and boy fish and girl fish, whose lights are like dandelions, except that they're blue. And we'll see kittens and bear cubs on tiptoe, the two of us. But her voice changed as if she had been struck, and sorrowfully she repeated, "Only the two of us." The child answered with little cries. On the other side of the door, Anna was also in darkness, and Kastner's heart was filled with love for her and the child. "You will see the sad fish who live deep down in the sea. They have lanterns to light their way, and when they are too cold," she hesitated, "they run away to the land of the fur-coated fish," said Kastner in a low voice as he pushed open the door. She had clutched the back of her chair and was nervously shaking her head as if to deny both Kastner's arrival and the existence of fur-coated fish. He was smiling with a paralyzed smile which he felt drawing the skin on his face like a wound that is closing. The shadow from the window formed on Anna's bosom a great black cross that shook as she trembled, and Kastner could see that under her skirts her knees were shivering like shoulders. She got up, still clinging to the back of her chair as if she were tied to it. She finally let go of it, reached for the switch, but did not dare to touch it. He felt that she was afraid of seeing his face in the light. Words and gestures were absurd and false, above all ridiculous, more violent and less deep than their feelings. They were almost parodies. Only silence and that common immobility that was stronger than an embrace would have been appropriate. But neither of them dared, and they fell into each other's arms. "Tell me, what was it like?" she asked when she drew away from him. "Terrible," he said simply. He caressed the child's head and felt the cheek that sought his hand. He hardly knew the features of the little face. All he remembered was its expressions, and before its first smile on the eve of his departure, the child's existence had had no tangible reality for him. That life filled with buoyant hope, but above all he treasured the absolute animal confidence which the child had in him. One day when he had slapped his fingers for pulling the dog's coat, the child had sought refuge in his arms, weighted with slumber, the soft cheek tilted into his hand. It seemed to express the completeness of the child's trust, which extended even to its dreams. For him alone, Kastner was a world of joy. Yesterday, at this hour, Kastner gently withdrew his hand, passed it before his eyes, and made out the 5 fingers in the limpid darkness. Had his nails grown? He wondered. They passed into the study. She turned to him. Did they accept the false identity? He had just turned on the light. Instinctively, she had drawn her shoulders back, but no. "I was so afraid that," she said. By the glow of the cigarette, he had seemed emaciated. As a matter of fact, the loss of flesh changed his bony face very little, and she was familiar enough with letters from wives of prisoners who could not recognize their husbands from those who were told, quote, "Bring some clean linen," quote, because the shirt he had on was filthy with blood. Quote, "He had been so frightened," end of quote. "They accepted your false identity?" she asked a second time. He felt that these questions were recurring in his presence as they had recurred day after day during Anna's solitude. "No, that is, not at the beginning. Afterward, some other man claimed that he was Kastner." She raised her eyes in a silence so explicit that he was unable to answer. "No, I don't know who." She sat down on the couch near the window. She was silent, and she looked at him as though a part of himself had remained in death with the one who had given himself up. "Killed? I don't know. I have so many things to tell you," she said. "But right now I can't, not yet. I need just to talk about anything that comes into my head, to get used to the idea that you are with me once more." He knew that he should take her in his arms in silence, that only this could express what was between them and their dead comrade, but he was not in the mood for the old gestures of affection, and there are no others. "How is he?" asked Kastner, nodding towards the room where the child had fallen asleep. She answered with a motion of her head that expressed both melancholy and wonder, as if all the radiance she could muster would have been vain, as if the sound of her voice could not have expressed her love for the child without carrying with it the pain of her other love. In the 5 years that they had lived together, it was the first time that Kastner had come back from such a long journey, but he knew what these returns in the shadow of a future departure were to her. This suffering which made her cling to him with eyes full of desire for congeniality, for gaiety, yes, this suffering which he was causing her, separated him from her atrociously. And the fact that she approved of his departure with her mind and her heart, the fact that she was doing party work to the extent of her ability, made no difference. He sometimes wondered if in her innermost consciousness she did not reproach him for his life in which there was something that took no account of her suffering, a suffering she scarcely admitted but bore with humiliation and despair. He was not unaware of how much he himself sometimes begrudged her his own love. When the plane left the ground, there were whirls of leaves below us. Joy is always a little like that, whirling leaves, fluttering on the surface. There was a certain cruelty in denying joy at the very moment when she wished to be the embodiment of his joy, but she had guessed the attunement of her grief which his words implied, and nothing that united them made her suffer. "If only I could give you joy," she said. She felt his uneasiness, and shook her head with a sadness so delicately calculated in its very awkwardness that he realized once again how crude a man always is in matters of love. "My life is what it is. I have accepted it and even chosen it. I just want you to keep a tiny place for me in yours. But I was thinking of something, and I meant that I would like to give you more than I do." The husband of a friend of hers who had come back from a concentration camp used to wake up almost every night screaming, "Don't hit me." Kastner had shut his eyes, and Anna thought she would be afraid when he slept. "At certain moments," she went on, "I have the impression that it is not suffering which changes, but hope." Sadly, she raised her pale eyes between their long black lashes and looked up at him with a frown. Expression by expression, her intelligent face took on its familiar clarity. It seemed to have regained consciousness. Now he knew those few poor hidden movements which are the secret of a face. He knew its tears, its love, its sensuality. Her features could be for him the features of joy itself. Whatever humiliation he had known in the prison cell, these eyes could not have known without sharing. As she continued to speak, the lines of suffering gradually vanished from her face. "I have invented so many conversations with you that I'm always afraid of the moment of awakening. I had promised myself I would not tell you a single sad thing when the day came. There is more joy in me than—" She could not find the word, and with a gesture of her hand recovered her old smile for the first time, which showed her lovely teeth. Finally she said, not without bitterness, "But it does not dare to show itself," as if she were still afraid. She had not dared to say this until now. Was it too soon for even the idea of happiness to rise between them? Life was enveloping him as his arm enveloped her body, was slowly winning him back. "Perhaps," she said, "I am thinking what to say to you because today I find it hard to think of anything else, but that does not make it wrong. I am not always a very happy woman. I live a difficult life, and yet nothing in the world is more wonderful, nothing, than to know the child is there and that he is mine. I think of the fact that there are, how many, 5,000, 10,000 children in the city? And thousands of women who will shortly be seized by labor pains, they almost always begin around 1 or 2 in the morning, and who are waiting, with anguish, yes, but also with something else, something beside which the word joy has almost no meaning, nor any other word, and since the world began, every night has been like that." By her voice he guessed that modesty and perhaps a remote and superstitious anxiety made her express her joy in the only images which had remained vivid to her through her months of anguish. They heard the child's voice, but he was not crying, he was talking to himself. "When he was born, you were in Germany. I awoke, I looked at him so tiny in his crib, and the thought came to me that his life would be what all life is, and I cried my heart out over him and over myself. As I was very weak, the tears kept coming, and yet from that moment I knew there was something for me which was beyond grief. Men do not have children. He could not detach his eyes from that face which he had thought dead. And yet in the cells, you see, they need terribly something real, something living, as deeply rooted as pain. Joy has no language. For me, joy was music. I have a horror of music now. She was about to ask why and instinctively checked herself. He felt that she listened to him more with her body than with her mind. As a mother, and understood far more than his words, the thought shaped itself obscurely in his mind that man had become man in spite of prison cells, in spite of cruelty, and that dignity alone, perhaps, could offset pain. But he felt like looking at Anna, not like thinking. Someone suddenly knocked at a nearby door. Kastner once again heard the knocks of the prison, but she had been more startled than he. "I thought it was you who were coming." A door opened amid a hum of cordial voices, an earthly door, human voices. "I should like to write again," he said. "In the cell I tried to use music to defend myself. For hours it produced images naturally, an endless stream of them. And by chance a single sentence, the call of the carabineers. And if this night should be a night of destiny." She seized his hand, lifted it to her forehead, and pressing her face against the back of it, she murmured, "May it be blessed until the coming of dawn." She had looked away into the night, her profile barely emerging from the hand which she kept in hers. It had been raining, and a car passed over the wet paving with the sound of leaves rustling in the wind. Framed by the window, Anna's eye, half hidden by the hand, seemed to be staring at the corner of the two deserted streets. Kastner knew that as long as he lived, the image of that corner house would remain vivid. In a low voice, Anna said, "Even you're going away again shortly. I am ready to, better than you think." She had wanted to say accept it. The house had 6 windows, 3 on each side, and 2 dormer windows. They were all in shadow, yet brighter than the sky because of some glimmer caught by the glass, still glistening with rain, and the whole night was relaxing as Anna's arms had relaxed a while ago. One of those moments which make men believe a god has just been born, flooded the house from which a boy came out only to vanish in the shadow. And it seemed to Kastner that out of the blood-stained earth the true meaning of existence was emerging, and that the earth's obscure destiny was about to be realized. He closed his eyes. Touch penetrated farther than all the other senses, farther than thought itself. And only the pressure of Anna's brow against his fingers was in harmony with the peace of the earth. He saw himself again running around the cell, 1, 2, 3, 4, to find out if she was alive. He opened his eyes again immediately, and it seemed to him that he held their eternity in his grasp. An eternity composed of his fellow prisoners of yesterday, of the child's trusting cheek, of the crowd loyally clinging to its companions in torture, of the face of the pilot in the hurricane, of the man who had given himself up for him, even of his forthcoming return to Germany, the eternity of the living and not the eternity of the dead. It swept everything along with it, and meeting in the very pulsation of his blood with the only thing in man that was greater than man, the gift of manhood. It beat with great throbs through the once more deserted street where the wind was beginning to rise. The memory of his acts would be like the memory of his comrade's blood, and on the day of his death in Germany, this moment would die with him. He suddenly felt that he could not endure to remain motionless. "I feel like walking, like going out with you anywhere." "I must go and get someone to take care of the baby." She went out. He turned out the light, let the earthly night enter, looked once more at the 2 still deserted streets. A cat darted round the corner on swift, mouse-like feet. They were now going to speak, remember, exchange experiences. All this would become a part of everyday life. A stairway which they would descend side by side, into the street, under the sky, eternally looking down upon the defeats or victories of men's wills.